Before Europe heard a single note from him, a child arrived in Salzburg on January 27, 1756, carrying the enormous baptismal name Johannes Chrysostomus Wolfgang Theophilus Mozart. The original title carried a formal, weighty tone, yet around 1770, the 14-year-old intentionally transformed his identity to Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, swapping Theophilus for its Latin equivalent to assert personal independence. His beginning was framed by two very different parents, whose strengths did not match in rank, but locked together with unusual force. Originating from Augsburg, Bavaria, Leopold Mozart relocated to Salzburg during his youth, working diligently over time to achieve a prestigious position, playing violin and composing for the Prince Archbishop's royal court. Anna Maria Pertl came from a poor rural family and married Leopold in November 1747 at 27, bringing not prestige, but toughness, warmth, and the kind of endurance households quietly survive on. Profound sorrow underscored their union, as just two of the couple's 7 babies survived their earliest years, ensuring that every quiet moment, rising temperature, or shallow breath carried immense anxiety. The survivors were Maria Anna, known as Nannerl, born in 1751, and Wolfgang, the youngest, a child loved not casually, but with the sharpened fear of parents who knew loss firsthand. The boy wasn't stepping onto a blank canvas. His talented, intelligent older sister Nannerl was already present, acting simultaneously as his friend, competitor, role model, and reflection. Inside the Mozart home, music was not decoration for special evenings, but the daily weather of the family, shaped by Leopold's profession, discipline, and restless ambition. Beyond their doors, Salzburg appeared sophisticated yet lacked true independence, falling under the domain of the Holy Roman Empire, a fragmented political territory encompassing large parts of contemporary Austria and Germany.
Salzburg appeared.
Austria itself stood inside the Habsburg rulers' personal domain, tied to Hungary and Bohemia, which meant ordinary lives were constantly pressed by distant crowns and inherited power. Because Salzburg operated as a combined principality and archbishopric, the ruling Catholic Prince Archbishop governed both civic life and spiritual matters, seamlessly merging governmental power with church leadership. In that kind of world, raw talent could sparkle, but it could not advance alone. Rank, patronage, permission, and the moods of powerful men decided what became possible. Good fortune struck before the toddler could even talk, as Siegmund Schrattenbach, a leader with a profound passion for melodies who aimed to elevate Salzburg's cultural prominence, occupied the throne. Single condition turned a narrow system into a crack of light, and from a family marked by death, discipline, and rare chances, a prodigy now had room to begin. The ideal incubator for such exceptional brilliance didn't resemble a sprawling mansion, but rather a cramped living space overflowing with an endless, continuous stream of noise. The Mozart family lived on the third floor at number 9 Getreidegasse in Salzburg's Old Town, under the hard shadow of Hohensalzburg Fortress. And this distinct division was significant. The growing boy experienced intense political authority just beyond his walls, while vibrant melodies constantly filled his indoor sanctuary. This was not a house where people performed for show and then went quiet, but a place where music functioned like weather, routine, and family law. Long before the public ever recognized his child's legendary identity, Leopold intentionally cultivated this musical environment through slow, deliberate, and methodical efforts. He brought musician friends upstairs for informal sessions, turning the apartment into a compact concert room where a child could hear real skill at close range. Since he provided violin lessons to supplement his earnings, strict routines, active listening, and constant corrections became deeply woven into their household's everyday rhythm. In the very year Wolfgang was born, Leopold published a respected violin manual, proof that he was not just a player, but a serious teacher who understood method. Initially, the household pinned its greatest artistic ambitions entirely on his older sibling Nannerl, rather than Wolfgang. Around 1759, Leopold noticed 7-year-old Nannerl's interest and began teaching her clavier, the keyboard family most often represented then by the harpsichord. This provided the perfect opportunity. Although the instruction targeted his sibling, the young toddler lingered nearby, quietly absorbing and memorizing complex rhythms well before receiving any official invitation. Then came the moment that changed the household's story. As the father drafted specific piano drills for Nannerl, the 3-year-old toddler independently deciphered and played them unassisted. At first glance, it might have looked like cute imitation, the kind adults laugh at and forget by dinner. However, the father noticed an exceptionally rare and calculated brilliance. The toddler wasn't merely randomly pressing notes, but actively grasping fundamental composition and harmonic rules. That realization ended the fantasy that this was a passing trick. His father started actively tutoring him, and the subsequent rate of progress felt genuinely alarming. By age 4, Wolfgang was already being instructed on keyboard, organ, and violin, an education far broader than most children could have tolerated, much less loved. At this distinct crossroads, the brilliant youth transformed from a mere household spectacle into an intensely focused, rigorous undertaking. Leopold's ambition met Wolfgang's hunger to learn, and instead of clashing, they fed each other. Soon, the household witnessed extraordinary feats that forced seasoned artists to drop their casual grins and gawk. One day, when two of Leopold's friends came to play new string trios, 6-year-old Wolfgang begged to take the second violin part. Initially, his father declined, presumably believing the youngster would disrupt important rehearsals and crumble beneath the intense challenge. But Johann Andreas Schachtner let the child shadow him, expecting no more than a charming little attempt. The ensuing results were absolutely astonishing, as the youngster rapidly demonstrated an ability to sight read and maintain tempo without requiring any external assistance whatsoever. He was then allowed to try Leopold's first violin line, the hardest part, and even with tiny hands and awkward technique, he played all 6 trios without serious mistakes. The professionals present were no longer merely observing early talent, but facing undeniable proof. And the evidence kept getting stranger. During another incident, Leopold and Schachtner discovered the ink-stained boy seemingly drafting pure gibberish onto a piece of paper. The boy calmly explained that he was writing the first movement of a clavier concerto, and when they looked closer, the page showed real musical organization rather than childish chaos. His father complimented the piece, while cautioning it was impossibly complex to perform, prompting the boy to insist that sufficient rehearsal was the only requirement before immediately demonstrating it himself. In that instant, performance, imagination, and fearless confidence fused into one picture, and Salzburg was no longer just raising a talented child. They were truly observing an absolute marvel unfold right before their eyes. Later generations would catalogue these first surviving pieces as K1A, K1B, and K1C in Ludwig von Kochel's 1862 numbering system, but in that moment they were simply the first footprints of genius. Right before the boy's 6th birthday in early 1762, Leopold brought both kids to Munich, finally introducing his extraordinary household prodigies to the ruling elite. This was more than a trip, because he needed to know whether amazement born in private rooms could survive public judgment. While at court, the siblings amazed Elector Maximilian III and this response proved to Leopold their phenomenon succeeded elsewhere. Salon invitations followed, and he saw curiosity hardening into something more useful, which was influence. This triumph erased his doubts, prompting him to target Vienna next, since Empress Maria Theresa's court held the power to transform their destiny. To reach it, he persuaded Archbishop Siegmund to grant paid leave and cover part of the cost, proving patronage still ruled the road. The Mozart family departed Salzburg on September 18, 1762, and their 3-week trek to Vienna essentially turned into a long practice session along the way. In Linz, the children gave their first public concert there, and Leopold learned that every audience had to become the next introduction. Their concert in Linz sparked elite rumors as nobles brought news of the talented youngsters directly to the imperial palace. Then, on the 13th October, the family was summoned to Schönbrunn Palace, and Leopold's new promise had become legitimacy and sensation. At Schönbrunn, Wolfgang amazed the royal pair at the keyboard, then rushed to Maria Theresa, hopped into her lap, and showered her with kisses. The move was innocent, bold, and politically perfect, turning skill into a story people wanted to repeat, because love travels faster than respect. Elite Viennese families vied to entertain the 6-year-old genius, making each new offer feel like a victory and another space to dominate.
Leopold kept pushing, convinced that slowing down would waste the opening. Leopold kept
pushing, convinced that slowing down would waste the narrow opening destiny had finally offered. Their upward trajectory suddenly stalled when Wolfgang became terribly sick prior to another palace trip, likely catching scarlet fever or smallpox. Even Maria Theresa worried that Leopold was demanding too much, and suddenly the family's rise depended on recovery, not applause. Wolfgang healed, and after the 7 Years' War concluded in February 1763, the continent appeared secure enough to take a much bigger risk. Leopold planned a grand tour, financed by the Archbishop and other backers who now believed the venture could pay off. They hit the road again that June, stopping the aimless wandering to instead tackle the royal circuit with calculated bravery. Back in Munich, Wolfgang and Nano impressed the elector once more, proving the first success was not a fluke of novelty. 10 days later in Augsburg, Leopold purchased a portable keyboard, practically showing that their base now existed wherever a concert might occur. The Rhodes still refused obedience, and in Stuttgart he failed to secure contact with Duke Karl Eugen of Württemberg. This lost opportunity proved that growing popularity still depended on status, scheduling, and chance, prompting the group to journey up the Rhineland instead. On the 18th of August in Frankfurt, one concert landed so strongly that 4 more were added, turning an appearance into a local run of victories. Wolfgang wowed audiences with stunts, like playing blindly under a sheet, mixing supreme skill with drama to make his brilliant talent truly obvious. At the final concert, a teenage Johann Wolfgang von Goethe was listening, and one future giant quietly witnessed another beginning. As Europe wasn't just observing a gifted touring family anymore. It was witnessing a promotional crusade gain serious traction. In late September, the Mozarts entered the Austrian Netherlands, where modern Belgium opened doors into Habsburg political networks. Under Prince Charles Alexander of Lorraine's rule, each impressive concert now held political significance alongside the usual cheers. Brussels became the next proving ground, and rumor reached the city before the family did. Their early November shows triumphed, showing the Salzburg youths could captivate fresh crowds without depending on hometown charm. For Leopold, each victory strengthened a larger argument. Wolfgang belonged on Europe's biggest stages. Paris made this case tougher, as its elite gatherings were packed with doubters, sponsors, and brutal critics. Leopold understood that if the children won there, their fame would stop feeling regional and become international. Entertainment and social rank intertwined at Versailles, where Wolfgang deeply charmed King Louis XV, Queen Marie, and Madame de Pompadour. That appearance turned him into a living story, moving through palaces, salons, and musical circles at once. Paris offered even stronger validation before the group headed out on April 10, 1764. The publication of sonatas K6-7 and K8-9 showed his talent could survive beyond the concert hall. Publishing changed the game entirely, letting strangers evaluate the boy through written notes rather than just concert memories. In that moment, Wolfgang began entering history not just as a prodigy, but as a composer. London traded royal glamour for an urban centre shaped by public community concerts and the massive influence of Handel. That made England useful and dangerous, because admiration there came with harsher scrutiny. Royal support came on April 27, 1764, when King George III and Queen Charlotte welcomed the family with open arms. Welcome gave the family legitimacy in a city where access often determined artistic survival. Their June 5 community show moved the kids out of royal chambers and placed them before prominent nobles and politicians. Success there proved Wolfgang could command not only intimate wonder, but a crowded room charged with expectation. The country essentially served as a studio too, where he steadily composed 6 sonatas for the piano and violin. Dedicating one to Queen Charlotte was both musical respect and smart patronage, linking art to protection. The young phenomenon was transforming into something far more lasting, an active composer. After more than 15 months in England, Leopold planned to go home, but the Dutch ambassador urged a detour to The Hague. Leopold concurred, since stopping seemed utterly foolish, while the continent remained captivated by their music. Then illness struck before the scheduled 30th September concert, and the tour met one of its harshest reversals. Nanno became severely ill initially, leaving Wolfgang to play solo and highlighting the true vulnerability of their touring strategy. Soon, Wolfgang was bedridden too, and his longer illness turned triumph into waiting, fear, and suspended momentum. Without the youth, there was no show, and the concert gaps tested if their fame could withstand a hiatus. Their return on the 22nd January 1766 felt earned, as the children finally performed together again and restored their famous partnership. The boy might have actually debuted his 4th Symphony in D major and 5th Symphony in B-flat major, countering his anxiety by composing. The later route through the Low Countries, back to Paris, into Switzerland, and across southern Germany, became a long descent from glory. In May, they collected baggage abandoned prior to the English trip, a simple fact highlighting the chaotic and brutal nature of touring life. By July, they were crossing Switzerland, and by November 1766, they reached Salzburg exhausted, enlarged, and unmistakably changed. They departed as local wonders and came back as continental stars, bringing home the truth that enduring hardship enriches brilliance better than mere compliments. Home should have felt safe, but after 3 years abroad, childhood no longer fit the Mozart family. Education was interrupted, daily habits vanished, and cheering crowds took the place of a standard childhood. Leopold recognized the cost, so the manager stepped back and the father-teacher stepped in. He educated Wolfgang and Nanno in mathematics, languages, philosophy, history, and geography, hoping to equip them for the reality outside their celebrity. Yet every lesson carried pressure, because Wolfgang was no ordinary student, and everyone knew it. An unspoken strain also lingered within the household. Nana was 15, close enough to manage that her musical partnership with Wolfgang suddenly looked fragile. Although Wolfgang wasn't quite 11, the entire continent already recognized him, completely upending typical assumptions regarding age, rank, and potential. Then admiration cooled, and rumors spread that Leopold must be secretly writing the boy's compositions. People trusted Wolfgang's piano skills, yet writing original music seemed overly complex, grown up, and implausible for a mere kid. Archbishop Siegmund answered the gossip with a ruthless test. He handed Wolfgang a religious text, locked him in a solitary space for 7 days, and eliminated any potential cop-outs. Come, if the boy failed, the miracle would shrink into family myth. Rather, Wolfgang responded swiftly and strictly, drawing on fresh choir background to craft 18 arias and recitatives. They became the first part of Die Schuldigkeit des ersten Gebots, proving stamina, structure, and unmistakable authorship. He composed the 3-act Apollo et Hyacinthus during that very year, pulling inspiration directly from Ovid's Metamorphoses. Opera demanded architecture, character, pacing, and nerve, and Wolfgang met it, leaving the doubters behind. As Vienna requested their return in the fall of 1767, it seemed fate had ultimately unlocked the main doors. Archduchess Maria Josepha was preparing to marry King Ferdinand IV of Naples, and the whole city pulsed with royal theatre, money, and opportunity. Leopold understood that royal marriages were far more than simple celebrations, since a perfectly scheduled concert might elevate their household indefinitely. Then the lights went out. Maria Josepha passed away from smallpox that October, abruptly shifting Vienna's atmosphere from dazzling joy to sudden mourning. Within weeks, the city felt less like a capital and more like a trap, with fear moving faster than music. Leopold responded in his usual fashion, acting swiftly while strategizing deeply, relocating his relatives before the deadly outbreak could encircle them entirely. But this was the kind of enemy planning could not fully outrun. Wolfgang and Nannerl contracted smallpox regardless, and with a single devastating blow, the dazzling allure of their superstar lifestyle vanished. Applause could fill a hall, but it could not protect a child from fever, infection, and the blind randomness of disease. Wolfgang became terribly sick, transforming their initial optimism into agonizing anxiety. Leopold later described his son's face and body as badly marked, swollen so severely that even his eyelids were affected. Thomas. Wolfgang's eyes remained shut for 9 straight days, rendering him briefly sightless and compelling his relatives to face their worst nightmare. In the 18th century, smallpox was not a passing illness people casually survived, but a killer that often left scars on the living and graves for the unlucky. This is exactly why his ensuing healing feels incredibly striking. All Europe did not yet know what Mozart would become, but for a moment that future was hanging by a thread. Once the relatives traveled back to Vienna in July 1768, it truly seemed like an intensely hard-won return. Wolfgang was no longer only the dazzling boy at the keyboard, but a survivor whose resilience deepened the legend around him. They quickly re-established contact with the royal household, demonstrating that those terrifying months hadn't banished them from elite political circles. Then fresh favor arrived from Joseph, Maria Theresa's son and co-ruling emperor. He offered Wolfgang an opportunity beyond simply wowing crowds, letting the boy actually write and conduct an opera. During the first half of 1769, Wolfgang completed the 3-act La Finta Semplice, a serious test for someone still young enough to be dismissed on sight. And he certainly got rejected. As some Viennese musicians resented the idea of taking direction from a child, while others still clung to the insulting theory that Leopold must be the real author. Therefore, the roadblock simply assumed a different form. Wolfgang was no longer fighting sickness alone, but disbelief, jealousy, and the pride of grown men threatened by obvious talent. Leopold refused to linger and waste his energy on that messy ordeal. Back in Salzburg, he reset the board and aimed at Italy, where opera meant prestige, money, and harder judgment. For this trip he brought solely Wolfgang, a subtle yet crucial indicator that his boy's journey was starting to branch off from the household that nurtured him. They crossed the Alps in winter, and reached Milan on the 23rd of January 1770, entering a Habsburg city where opera carried real cultural power. Milan held significance since its high society connections possessed the power to transform childhood talent into permanent prestige. The gamble paid early when Count Karl Joseph von Firmian became Wolfgang's patron. Following an early March performance at the nobleman's estate, Wolfgang landed a contract to compose an opera for 100 ducats, providing him with cash, profound approval, and a genuine foundation in Italy. Just as telling, his playful remarks to Nannel about ballet girls showed a teenager beginning to step out from behind the glass case of child genius. While traveling down the route to Florence, he penned his initial string quartet, demonstrating that sickness hadn't restricted his creative horizons whatsoever. It had burned something away, and what emerged was tougher, bolder, and moving toward greatness with his eyes fully open. The Italian landscape continued passing by, yet Wolfgang now appeared far less like a showcased spectacle and significantly more like a blooming creator, developing a unique internal vision. In Lodi, between coach rides and court calls, he wrote the string quartet later catalogued as K80, proving composition had become a traveling habit. Florence provided an experience far more unique than Cheers, when, during early April 1770, he encountered Thomas Lindley, a talented British violin player, born merely 3 months later. That meeting mattered because prodigies usually face adults, not equals, and Lindley's death at 22 later makes their brief friendship feel almost unbearably fragile. Rome escalated the pressure once more. During spring 1770, the pair walked into the Eternal City and lingered under Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling, as though the past itself was evaluating the boy. Then they were received by Pope Clement XIV, who awarded Wolfgang the Order of the Golden Spur, confirming that courts, nobles, and even the church recognized him. Prestigious awards didn't guarantee financial stability, prompting the Mozarts to travel south into Naples, reside alongside Sir William Hamilton, and face that familiar urge to continually generate new music. By late June, they turned north again, reaching Bologna on July 20, 1770, where public wonder gave way to serious preparation for Milan. While there, Wolfgang developed Mitridati, Re di Ponto, drawing inspiration directly from Racine's dramatic play concerning Mithridates VI, Rome's stubborn adversary. The subject fit the moment because opera now demanded power, resistance, downfall, endurance, and real command over dramatic forces far bigger than salon tricks. The real threat became high expectations. Because Italy birthed opera, average talent could no longer be masked by boyish charm. If he failed, the image of genius cracked. If he succeeded, he moved into another rank entirely. The ultimate trial arrived on December 26, 1770, as 14-year-old Wolfgang led Mitridates' debut from the harpsichord at Milan's Teatro Regio Ducal. It was an immediate success, running 22 times to full houses, not as polite praise for a gifted boy, but as public victory that silenced doubters. Though Venice offered a gentler conclusion to their trip, the reality remained clear. Wolfgang arrived in Italy wanting approval and departed fully validated by intense critique, and Leopold realized they had turned a corner. Spring 1771 should have felt like a victory lap, but the road home opened one more dangerous door. Even before they reached Salzburg, word broke that Empress Maria Theresa desired an opera from Wolfgang for Milan's royal stage. The occasion was the October wedding of her son, Archduke Ferdinand Karl, to an Italian princess, so failure would be public, political, and expensive. He was assigned Ascanio in Alba, an elegant tale in which Venus oversees the wedding of Ascanius, the son of Aeneas. It was perfect Habsburg material, tying love to destiny and wrapping a royal wedding in the glow of Rome's legendary beginnings. Leopold quickly realized that time, not lacking skill, posed the actual threat. Father and son rushed home and reached Salzburg on the 28th of March 1771, because success in Europe only counted if you could repeat it on command. That summer essentially morphed into an intense, silent race. By August, they were back in Milan, and only then did the libretto finally reach Wolfgang's hands. Royal demands now required completed compositions on a strict schedule, since formal events refused to wait for artistic inspiration. He answered with the colder discipline of a young professional, not just the sparkle of a prodigy. 2-act Ascanio became available for practice by late September, making their incredible success appear more like a calculated process. On the 17th of October 1771, the opera premiered and landed exactly as the family hoped, winning enthusiastic approval from the newlyweds and their glittering circle. Wolfgang showed yet again that he could satisfy royal demands without compromising his strength, appeal, or distinct musical personality. At that point, the obvious reward seemed close enough to touch. Whether persuaded by Leopold or acting on personal instinct, Archduke Ferdinand sought approval to employ Wolfgang as a royal musician. That would have changed everything, turning applause into salary, access, and a future that did not vanish after the last curtain. Suddenly, a massive roadblock descended from the highest authorities. Maria Theresa replied coldly that she neither knew nor believed her son needed a composer. This harsh rejection hurt deeply, since it came right after continuous praise, revealing the extreme fragility of royal support. Money likely sharpened the answer, since the Habsburg state was still strained by decades of costly wars from 1701 to 1763. This harsh realization stung. Monarchs might praise and exploit brilliant talent, yet still completely decline to pay for it. So when the Mozarts left Milan on the 5th December 1771, they carried both success and defeat, because Wolfgang was celebrated everywhere and secured nowhere. Occasionally, the harshest reality for a youthful prodigy arrives immediately following the cheers, right as political leadership shifts. Wolfgang returned to Salzburg, expecting rest, and within a day, Prince Archbishop Siegmund Schrattenbach was dead without warning. This particular departure carried immediate consequences, since that specific sponsor had supported his career from the very beginning. Suddenly, the family's future hung on one hard question. Would the next ruler love music or merely tolerate it? The Vice-Chancellor's son, Count Hieronymus Colloredo, took his place. While seemingly encouraging, he naturally possessed a much icier personality. He kept Mozart near, yet the air changed from warmth to usefulness, from favor to supervision. During July 1772, Wolfgang secured his initial salaried position as Concertmeister, directing performances from the Royal First Violin Section. The salary of 150 florins gave him rank, routine, and proof that the miracle child had turned professional. However, after dominating the entire continent, remaining in Salzburg basically felt like living inside a gorgeous, velvet-lined prison. So he answered limitation the only way he could, by working harder than the walls around him. He composed 8 symphonies throughout that year, personally generating career momentum since elite sponsors failed to provide it. In October, the Mozarts returned to Milan, where another adult test waited in Lucio Silla. This musical production focused on the Roman tyrant Sulla, leaving an incredibly brief preparation period before the December 26 debut. The suspense was not whether Wolfgang had talent, but whether talent could survive repeated pressure. Lucio Silla made a massive impact and ran for 26 shows, marking an astonishing triumph considering the composer was merely 15. Yet Leopold searched again for a richer court post and again left Milan with praise instead of security. This lingering pain sparked their subsequent risk in Vienna, where reports of a severely sick Kapellmeister seemed to present a perfect opportunity. Leopold moved fast, chasing not just commissions, but permanence, salary, and a future that would not vanish after curtain call. Vienna offered a response far colder than a simple rejection: complete silence. Maria Theresa shut Leopold down, and the salons that once competed for Wolfgang barely called at all. The very metropolis that previously celebrated his talent now treated him like someone who could easily be ignored. After 2 fruitless months, the family went back to Salzburg without the post, without prestige, and without illusions. This provided a brutal realization. While developing greater artistic depth, Wolfgang slowly lost the childhood novelty that initially unlocked crucial doors. But retreat gave him a larger apartment across the river and, more importantly, a room to compose in. As this seeming setback transformed into a creative laboratory, letting him shape intense frustration into structured art rather than vocalizing complaints. In 1773, he answered with 7 more symphonies, including the fierce G minor No. 25, full of jagged leaps and offbeat tension. Since only 2 of his symphonies utilize minor keys, this specific piece resembles a storm erupting from behind a perfectly refined facade. He also wrote 6-string quartets shaped by Haydn, proving that while courts hesitated, Mozart kept growing and became harder to ignore. Following years of amazing the continent, Mozart faced the exact terrifying phase every emerging star dreads, when cheers simply stop covering basic expenses. In 1774, a new opening appeared, and Leopold saw it as the breakthrough he had been hunting for years. During the summer, Bavaria's Elector hired Wolfgang to compose a humorous opera titled La Finta Giardiniera, also known as The Pretend Garden Girl. To outsiders, it looked like one more assignment, but to Leopold it looked like a doorway into real court employment. The duo approached Munich not simply as a casual trip, but essentially as a high-stakes tryout for lasting financial stability. When they headed there in December 1774, hope rode beside pressure, and both men knew too much now depended on one premiere. Leopold continued directing their actions with strict precision, hoping that meticulous preparation might finally compel destiny to work in their favor. Wolfgang arrived with genuine credentials, but opera is ruthless because every new opening night wipes the slate clean. The Bavarian court had stopped marveling at a prodigy, instead evaluating whether the youthful musician actually fit in with seasoned professionals. Then the shock landed. Right after Wolfgang's 19th birthday, La Finta Giardiniera met a disappointing public reaction on January 13, 1775. This was not a postponed success or a political snub disguised as criticism. This marked his initial genuine opera failure, an undeniably public disaster that he simply could not justify. Or, for a family used to turning every stage into evidence, the failure felt cold, almost unnatural, like the floor had moved. Once he returned to Salzburg, the pain intensified in a more silent, cruel manner. Wolfgang kept composing and performing, but the great courts of Europe did not come calling. Fancy offers stopped coming in, no wealthy patron broke up his daily grind, and his previously relentless forward progress started to fade. What hurt was not one dramatic rejection, but the slow humiliation of nothing happening at all. However, isolation can ultimately strengthen natural ability. Up to that point, several of his early piano concertos had grown from sonatas by other composers, reshaped for piano and orchestra. During the mid-1770s, he started crafting entirely fresh keyboard concertos featuring his unique personal style. That shift mattered deeply, because stalled opportunity pushed him toward authorship instead of imitation. He had evolved past merely being a clever adapter who relied on other people's structures. He was building a language that sounded unmistakably like himself. However, developing creatively failed to fix his household's tough financial situation. In 1777, the Archbishop cut expenses in Salzburg, and Mozart was essentially pushed out of his position. This offense stung deeply, as an artist renowned throughout the continent was suddenly downgraded to a mere financial expense. Once again, genius lost a round to hierarchy, bookkeeping, and men who could live perfectly well without music. This painful setback pushed him into a tougher, more mature phase of life. He needed money, which meant he had to travel again. But this time the old family machine would not move with him. Because Leopold was required to remain behind, the 21-year-old had to navigate his travels almost entirely independently for the very first occasion. His mother, Anna Maria, went with him, both comforting the separation and proving Leopold still could not fully release control. Departing their hometown on September 23, 1777, they initially traveled toward Munich, seeking one final remaining opportunity. Wolfgang felt the first taste of freedom without his father physically beside him, yet Leopold kept sending instructions through Anna Maria from afar. That optimism was crushed on September 30th. After directly asking Elector Maximilian Joseph for a position, the young artist learned no jobs were available. He even laid out his record, including 3 successful Milan operas, but years of labor collapsed into a closed door and one flat sentence. An unusual partial salvation followed when 10 affluent fans pledged 60 florins annually apiece, collectively surpassing his previous hometown earnings. The gesture proved he was admired but not protected, and Leopold immediately doubted whether promises without office or rank would hold. Consequently, he proceeded to Augsburg, bearing the familiar paradox that constantly plagued his career. Universally praised, yet completely lacking steady employment. Augsburg should have been a quick stop, but it catches Wolfgang at a dangerous moment, worn down by rejection and suddenly vulnerable to comfort. Staying near his uncle Franz Alois in his father's native city, he and Anna Maria temporarily found their travels feeling like a family gathering instead of a career maneuver. That softer air matters, because for once, Wolfgang can imagine belonging somewhere instead of auditioning everywhere. He encounters his 19-year-old cousin, Maria Anna Thekla, there. Upon departing, he mails her correspondences filled with playful poetry, mockery, and bawdy humor. Biographers still argue over those letters, reading them as desire, play, or pure emotional release, but they prove the young composer is more than a machine for court approval. Nevertheless, his primary career objective continuously falls apart. Augsburg is only a stop before Mannheim, where Elector Karl Theodor's famous musical court looks like the perfect opening, and Leopold expects a place worthy of Wolfgang's gifts. no opportunities materialize. As winter tightens, Leopold pushes Paris, still thinking in patrons, visibility, and survival. But Wolfgang hesitates, and that pause sounds like rebellion. His actual distraction takes a human form. Fridolin Weber's 16-year-old vocalist daughter, Aloysia Weber. To Wolfgang, she is beauty, talent, companionship, and a life not arranged by his father. He actually suggests traveling through Italy alongside Herr Weber and his girls, blending romance, art, and irresponsible independence. Leopold hears disaster. Following lengthy struggles against royalty and constant rejections, the musician is ultimately rebelling against his own family's control. Sometimes the city that promises rescue becomes the place where everything breaks. Departing Mannheim during March 1778, his journey to Paris was already significantly delayed and severely undermined. The delay mattered because he was no longer a miracle child, but a young man chasing shrinking opportunities. Prior to reaching Paris, Leopold grew suspicious again after the composer proposed returning Anna Maria to Salzburg. She wanted no part of Paris, but Leopold refused, fearing Wolfgang would run to the Webers and Italy. Consequently, the pair journeyed under strict directives, bound primarily by obligation rather than any mutual goal. Paris promised prestige, patrons, and visibility, yet the nobles showed little urgency about helping him. Within the continent's most magnificent capital, he continued floating without substantial backing, receiving far less praise than he anticipated or urgently required. Their lodgings were poor and damp, turning the fantasy of success into discomfort, delay, and waiting. Anna Maria subsequently fell severely ill inside their unsanitary lodgings, transforming his stagnant professional expedition into a terrifying domestic crisis. Wolfgang was forced to play caretaker while still pretending the trip had a professional future. During the evening of July 3, 1778, 57-year-old Anna Maria passed away within the French capital. Suddenly he was alone in a foreign city, with grief, guilt, and the practical burden of death. This tragedy seemed particularly harsh, since she had never actually desired to visit the city initially. Frightened of Leopold's reaction, Wolfgang first wrote that she was alive, only seriously ill. Overcome, he withheld the devastating truth until July 9, following her interment within a Parisian graveyard. Leopold answered with accusation, blaming Wolfgang for acting too slowly and tying the death to his dreams of Italy and the Weavers. Despite the profound sorrow, practical needs took priority, as his household still required financial stability and long-term employment. As, on August 31, Leopold secured Wolfgang's restoration as Concertmeister under Archbishop Colloredo at 500 florins a year. He agreed strictly on the condition of taking biennial trips, concluding this phase with harsh irony. Mourning his mother, flopping in France, upsetting Leopold, and rejoining the exact establishment he desperately sought to flee. Sometimes the hardest road is the one that takes you home, because home can feel less like shelter than judgment. By late 1778, Mozart wasn't coming home victorious. Instead, he was sliding back into obligations, letdowns, and an existence far narrower than he had dreamed. He delayed the inevitable with a stop in Munich that December, as if one last detour might soften the failure. Munich was also different. Maximilian III had passed away, Karl Theodor governed Bavaria, and an updated royal court introduced fresh musical opportunities. But opportunity was only half the reason he came, because Aloysia Weber was there, rising into exactly the singer he once pictured beside him. He still hoped that reuniting with her, or perhaps popping the question, might salvage 12 miserable months of sorrow and squandered time. Yet before meeting her, he slipped back into restless mischief, sending his cousin Maria Anna Thekla a letter full of innuendo and invitation. It seems like the action of an isolated guy seeking diversion, solace, and known surroundings as his foundation continually crumbled beneath him. Then the meeting came, and the fantasy died instantly. The composer presented Aloysia with a fresh aria, an offering packed with nostalgia, respect, and an intense affection he struggled to verbally express. She answered by claiming she did not know who he was, turning their past into a public dismissal. Constanze Weber noted that he masked his pain through theatrical behavior, goofing off at the keyboard and departing behind a facade of fake confidence. It was a sharp little performance, but only because humiliation needed a costume before it could survive the room. Behind closed doors, his facade crumbled, and he confessed to Leopold that he felt broken and incapable of composing quality tunes. For Mozart, that was more than heartbreak, because work had always been his way through pain, and now even that door was closed. Maria Anna Thekla provided a little solace, which he acknowledged. Yet this relief couldn't bring back his deceased mom or secure his upcoming career. On January 15th, 1779, just before his 23rd birthday, he finally returned to Salzburg with far less than legend once promised. The musical genius who once mesmerized Vienna and traveled across the continent returned home, completely lacking the prestigious position he had tried to secure. Italy, once the stage of his triumphs, no longer looked open, and even his restored Concertmeister salary fell to 450 florins, not 500. He returned more mature, cynical, and hurt. He remained stuck between brilliant talent and financial reliance, making his next struggle begin from absolute failure. Salzburg had become a velvet cage, and Mozart could feel his talent pressing against the bars. He was composing massive works suited for royalty and grand churches, but surviving essentially like a highly talented, severely restricted underling. The Coronation Mass in C major proved he could command grandeur, ceremony, and that thrilling emotional lift public power craved. His Sinfonia Concertante for violin and viola uncovered a deeply intimate, glowing, and affectionate quality, with the viola essentially functioning as his personal inner voice. Those works mattered because they showed a brutal mismatch. His imagination was growing faster than Salzburg could contain. Then Bavaria provided the initial genuine breakthrough in his stagnant career. In 1780, Elector Karl Theodor commissioned Idomeneo Re di Creta, an opera born from the wreckage after the Trojan War. The composer considered the task significantly more than mere work. It provided a brief getaway, vital relief, and a route to personal autonomy. He rushed toward it because opera still looked like freedom with a stage around it. Upon arriving in Munich during early November 1780, his energy and enthusiasm returned completely overnight. He composed, revised, coached singers, and pushed rehearsals with the intensity of a man finally treated like a serious artist. He wasn't merely handing over sheet music. He actively molded pacing, personalities, and dramatic tension directly from the core of the production. Munich revived him because success there depended more on judgment and talent than on obedient bows. Idomeneo debuted at the Munich Royal Theatre on January 29, 1781, with Leopold and Nannerl sitting in the audience to observe the performance. The opera was a major success, and the applause confirmed that his dramatic instincts had matured into something durable. The opera's continued presence in standard performance schedules makes that debut especially significant, proving that sheer excellence, rather than mere freshness, won out. But triumph still did not make him free. Following Empress Teresia's passing near the end of 1780, governmental focus shifted to Vienna as Joseph II solidified his grip on the throne. Archbishop Colloredo prepared to travel there, and Mozart had to follow as household property rather than honored guest. Therefore, he arrived in the perfect metropolis while serving an absolutely terrible boss. On March 16, 1781, Mozart arrived in Vienna, the place that would enlarge both his greatness and his danger. Vienna offered wealthier crowds, better networking, and massive risks, yet it could amplify embarrassing failures just as quickly as superstar status. Daily life under Colloredo turned sour almost at once. The composer despised sharing a residence with the Archbishop, feeling as though mere geographic proximity equated to constant monitoring. At meals he was seated below the valets, a tiny arrangement that hit like a public statement about his worth. Come, the deepest insult came from the unwritten rule behind these formalities. Extraordinary talent mattered less than obeying royal manners. Leopold answered with caution, urging restraint and warning his son not to attack their employer recklessly. He started eating at noblemen's mansions without getting approval first, treating each social gathering as a practice run for a completely independent lifestyle. As in a tense meeting on May 9, 1781, Mozart told the Archbishop he intended to resign as Salzburg's Concertmeister. Leopold grew extremely angry since this position provided financial safety, and resigning without a backup gig seemed utterly insane. Father and son were now divided completely, one thinking survival, the other dignity. Count Karl von Arco issued the ultimate threat, arguing that the Viennese public would quickly abandon him for the next trendy performer. It was the oldest threat in Europe, sharpened to a blade. Talent dazzles briefly, but institutions decide who stays. The composer remained stubbornly defiant. Upon attempting to officially quit during early June, Arco physically stopped him and forcibly fired him instead. Salzburg did not release him gracefully. It shoved him into uncertainty, and that shove opened the next great chapter. Once the musician finally escaped Salzburg's oppressive control, his upcoming struggle didn't involve royal employers, but rather his own romantic feelings. Cast out of the archbishop's household, he went straight to the Webers, choosing refuge over humiliation. The decision carried a thrilling charge, since these exact people had previously broken his heart before finally welcoming him inside. Vienna suddenly became the place where ambition and intimacy collided. The Weber household was drastically different, following Fridolin Weber's unexpected passing, a tragedy that left his relatives extremely vulnerable financially. They had relocated to Vienna, where survival depended on connections, reputation, and smart alliances. Aloysia, who previously consumed the composer's every thought, was now an acclaimed vocalist married to Joseph Lang. With that door closed, his attention shifted to Constance, 19, witty, warm, and far more reachable. Instead of unrealistic dreams, she provided true partnership and the chance to build a genuine home. What began as closeness inside the home soon became an attachment nobody could casually dismiss. Or, simultaneously, his professional life skyrocketed once the Emperor's court requested an opera for Russia's Grand Duke Paul. Die Entführung aus dem Serail followed a rescue from captivity, a plot that mirrored Mozart's own emotional world. Setbacks continued to plague him since the Grand Duke's arrival was pushed back, forcing the debut to wait. When the opera finally opened at the Imperial Burgtheater on July 16, 1782, it was a major triumph. This widespread European triumph earned him 1,200 florins, demonstrating that true financial independence could actually happen. But public victory could not settle the fight at home because Leopold opposed marriage to Constance. While the composer felt profound loyalty, his dad perceived impatience, coercion, and another impulsive romantic choice. The old split returned in full. Leopold wanted security, while Wolfgang wanted a life he chose himself. As complications worsened once the individual managing the Weber family's money required binding legal assurances. Mozart signed a prenuptial promise to pay 300 florins if he broke the engagement. Furious, Leopold perceived nothing but disrespect, volatility, and calculated exploitation throughout the entire deal. Mozart answered with a story of trust, saying Constance tore up the agreement because love mattered more than money. Regardless, their betrothal fractured multiple times, making each subsequent reunion feel hard-won instead of magically romantic. By summer 1782, the conflict turned raw after her mother withdrew consent, and Constance moved to a friend's home. After Mrs. Weber threatened police intervention to retrieve her, domestic tension morphed into a public emergency. Facing scandal, separation, and delay, the couple stopped waiting for permission and chose action. They tied the knot at St. Stephen's Cathedral on August 4, 1782, resolving one conflict while igniting a fresh feud with Leopold. Leopold accepted what he could not stop, but he still suspected Constance married for money rather than love. He protected their reputation and vowed to escort his bride to Salzburg, making their union a triumph but sparking another domestic conflict. Married life in Vienna did not begin with peace. It began with proof that Mozart's gamble was working. Following his nuptials, he spent months reworking a piece composed for the influential Hafner clan into Symphony No. 35 in D major. That mattered because he turned a rushed social duty into a blazing public declaration of who he had become. A project born out of duty ultimately resonated like a triumph. Swift, radiant, and completely undeniable. On March 23, the Hafner thundered through the Burgtheater, with Mozart conducting it himself. The introduction struck like a violently opened door, bursting with audacity, speed, and someone finished seeking approval. Vienna was finally giving him the stage he had chased since boyhood. During that identical evening, he performed Piano Concerto No. 13, the most recent of 3 concertos composed that winter. The message was obvious. He was not just a composer at a desk, but a total musical force in motion. The cheers also taught him a pragmatic lesson. Audiences gathered much quicker whenever he performed his personal concertos and directed his own compositions. But even as success rose, an older promise kept tightening around him. Although he promised his dad that he would visit Salzburg, he constantly found ways to delay the journey. The excuses piled up like comic props, hiding a real wound. He cited his wife's pregnancy, the incoming winter weather, and heavy workloads, ultimately even suggesting Archbishop Colloredo could imprison him. The claim sounded absurd, but fear was the truth underneath it. Salzburg continued representing harsh criticism, strict hierarchy, and the toxic domestic war zone he had struggled to flee. Then, private life raised the stakes on June 17, 1783, when Constance gave birth to their son, Raimund Leopold. The infant's name even acted as a peace offering for a dad who continued questioning their union. For a moment, Mozart may have hoped fatherhood could do what arguments never had and build a bridge home. Rather, he continuously penned nervous messages, dodging the choice as though physical separation might fix their deep-rooted interpersonal history. Eventually, duty cornered him, and delay stopped looking clever and started looking like surrender. Upon finally leaving Vienna, the couple made a tough decision and left their newborn child with a wet nurse. The decision exposed how unstable their lives still were, even with applause, commissions, and fresh prestige. Arriving in Salzburg on July 29, they brought along optimism, deep anxiety, and unresolved domestic conflicts. The homecoming did not heal much. Because his dad and sister never genuinely approved of the union, Constance immediately sensed their icy reception. Success in Vienna meant little inside a house, still measuring old injuries. Then the ultimate tragedy struck. Barely a month after arriving home, they received news that infant Raimund Leopold passed away on August 19. Loss should have pulled the family together. But grief does not automatically defeat pride, suspicion, or silence. Returning as an ascending spouse and dad, he discovered that neither career triumphs nor profound grief could force genuine affection. And in that bitter room, one lesson became impossible to miss. Conquering a city was easier than healing a family. Occasionally, a major win feels identical to getting even, and he experienced exactly that on October 26, 1783. His great mass in C minor rose before the same family circle that had doubted Constance from the start. Next occurred an unexpected development that absolutely nobody present could overlook. Constance herself sang the first soprano line, placing her voice at the center of Leopold's world and forcing private suspicion to stand in front of public beauty. The moment felt incredibly dramatic. since his music was finally accomplishing what verbal disputes never could. Come. Even unfinished, the 4 completed movements landed with overwhelming force and reminded Salzburg that Mozart could still command awe on his own terms. However, this massive success contained an underlying emotional pain. He never completed the Mass, and that unfinished score became a quiet mirror of his life. Brilliant in vision, unstable in closure, always reaching beyond what the world would let him settle. As the following morning, the couple departed his hometown, acting as though local victory could be briefly felt, yet never enjoyed long-term. The road back to Vienna wasted no time testing him again. Pausing in Linz for a November 4 performance, he realized he had shown up without bringing a single symphony. For another man, that mistake would have meant apology, delay, maybe humiliation. To him, it quickly became a war zone. In just 4 days, he wrote an entirely new symphony, moving with the speed of someone who had learned that hesitation could cost both money and reputation. The final product was Symphony No. 36 in C major, which people eventually dubbed the Linz. It surged with energy, confidence, and the hard shine of a counterpunch thrown under pressure. The hurried composition caused the work to seem less like a creative fluke and far more like top-tier professional self-preservation. Once again, crisis did not weaken him. It revealed the dangerous sharpness of his mind. Returning to Vienna, the composer quit seeking approval and began constructing his personal platform. In early 1784, he and Constanze moved into the Trattenhof on the Graben, a large building with its own concert hall. Rather than renting out pricey royal venues, he hosted his own performances, fully managing the space, his earnings, and his personal public reputation. That was a turning point, because he was no longer asking Vienna to host him, he was teaching Vienna to come to him. He also realized that constant innovation represented deliberate commerce, rather than simple luck. So he began writing a new piano concerto for each appearance, making every concert feel exclusive, urgent, and impossible to postpone. From 1784 through 1786, this incredible focus yielded piano concertos 14 to 25, an astonishing streak of 12 massive compositions. The strategy was both artistic and practical, because fresh music kept admirers talking, returning, and paying. This intense creative explosion generated compositions far grander than the initial spaces where they debuted. Piano Concerto No. 21 glowed with elegance, while No. 25 in C major opened with grand force and unusual breadth. Crowds experienced far more than refined amusement. They witnessed an artist reaching for everlasting greatness. For a moment, everything seemed to be lining up. Following the immense stress of 1783, 1784 evolved into an incredibly triumphant era within the musician's professional journey. He was now making around 4,000 florins a year, a striking rise for a man who had recently been fighting just to live independently. During September, Constanzi delivered their second boy, Carl Thomas, whose continued survival provided exceptionally rare comfort to their home. But Vienna's glamour carried a trap hidden behind the applause. The family relocated again into a massive flat near St. Stephen's Cathedral, positioning themselves closer to elite status, current trends, and vibrant urban social energy. Rent, clothing, entertaining, and the pressure to look aristocratic began draining money almost as fast as Mozart earned it. Consequently, while his professional fame continuously grew, his personal bank accounts were already sliding into substantial debt. Mozart understood the old lesson by now, that talent alone did not secure a future in a city ruled by status and access. During late 1784, he entered the Freemasons via the Beneficence Lodge, pursuing more than mere friendship by securing powerful connections and highly beneficial partnerships. In the 18th century, that decision was more than a hobby. It was a move toward power inside a culture built on connection. Ascending rapidly to Master Mason, he clearly demonstrated his awareness that even during massive triumphs, raw talent requires structural backing, and fresh perils constantly lurk just beneath the cheering crowds. The toughest audience Mozart ever faced was not Vienna, but the father whose silence still followed him. Over several years, Leopold criticized from a distance, measuring written correspondences against historical anxieties and previous letdowns. Mozart kept inviting him because public praise could not replace approval from the man who first shaped him. Leopold continually declined, and the city of Vienna practically illustrated exactly why. To him, that city meant independence, the one gamble he never fully trusted. Intense isolation finally broke his stubbornness only after Nannl wed and departed Salzburg during August 1784. So in February 1785, Leopold finally arrived like an old judge entering his son's chosen world. The composer had to show that personal independence hadn't destroyed him, but actually forged his success. At first, the visit felt rough, because Leopold quickly complained about Vienna's exhausting pace. Performances, visitors, evening meals, and continuous activity provided virtually zero opportunity for relaxation or emotional comfort. Then, Constance changed the temperature without drama, and that made her powerful. She instructed her mom and sibling to enthusiastically greet Leopold, provide excellent meals, and ease any lingering hostilities. Her steady care replaced suspicion with daily proof that Mozart had not married recklessly. An additional supporter emerged in a remarkably tiny package as Leopold bonded with young Karl. Come, the child gave the house a warmth arguments never could, turning a gamble into a family. After their interpersonal tension faded, the musician revealed the massive scale of his current professional triumphs. After concerts, aristocrats approached Leopold to congratulate him, reversing the years when he promoted the boy. He even contacted Nannerl in complete amazement, absolutely shocked that the former prodigy had become a genuine master. One report struck hardest. Emperor Joseph himself had once shouted, "Bravo, Mozart!" Within that elite circle, royal ovations represented undeniable validation, rather than mere empty compliments. Then, the family drama widened into history when Joseph Haydn entered Mozart's apartment. At 53, Haydn represented the continent's most highly revered musician, essentially serving as a walking legend. Now Mozart was being judged not by relatives or patrons, but by the finest musician alive. Working under Prince Nikolaus Esterházy at the remote Hungarian Schloss Esterházy, Haydn definitely hadn't traveled simply for formal pleasantries. He came to play quartets among friends, the deepest respect one composer can offer another. This proved crucial since performers often offer empty praise, yet only the actual compositions reveal absolute honesty. Haydn's Opus 33 quartets had opened the form with balance, wit, and daring design. Between 1782 and 1785, he replied by producing 6 original quartets and expanding his artistic boundaries even further. He absorbed Haydn's architecture, then added denser feeling, darker color, and more human weight. These works reflected the deliberate decisions of a mature creator, not a gifted youngster's automatic instincts. When Leopold heard the last three quartets, rumor finally became evidence. Every single thing the younger composer desperately needed to validate now hinged entirely upon Haydn's upcoming verdict. Haydn's verdict fell like a seal on years of struggle. Swearing honestly before God, he informed Leopold that his son was the absolute greatest musician he had ever personally encountered. It was not comfort for a father, but judgment meant to stand. Leopold eventually had to admit that his previously controlled son had completely outgrown any need for parental supervision. By April 25, Constance had won goodwill, Karl had softened his heart, and Vienna had done the rest. He departed feeling genuinely proud, yet the painful reality lingered. Affection might nurture early brilliance, but it can never restrict it permanently. Leopold leaves Vienna, and Mozart learns that family approval feels good, but does not keep an artist alive in a brutal stage city. To successfully maintain his career, he required the perfect collaborator rather than merely another performance, and this risky pursuit ultimately introduced Lorenzo da Ponte. Da Ponte is a Venetian in his 30s, a former priest marked by scandal, social risk, banishment, charm, brains, and the cold reflexes of a survivor. Initially, he collaborates with Antonio Salieri, a prominent rival to Mozart. Yet that partnership never really takes off, and this quiet failure ultimately points him straight toward Mozart. As the fit is obvious, Da Ponte brings theatrical nerve, fast language, and sharp insight into human weakness, while Mozart brings music that turns private feeling into undeniable truth. For operas, this separation means everything, since the writer constructs the plot, dialogue, and settings, while the musician brings them to life, creates tension, erupts, and shatters emotions. Early in the partnership, Mozart asks for a libretto based on Beaumarchais' 1784 comedy, The Marriage of Figaro, a risky choice in a court world built on rank. Taking place at Count Almaviva's Spanish estate during Figaro and Susanna's nuptials, the narrative confines both aristocrats and staff members within a single sophisticated, high-stress environment. Then the danger turns personal. Figaro discovers The Count wants to revive an abusive old privilege and targets Susanna before the marriage even begins. This imbues the production with deeper themes than simple humor. Beneath the jokes lies a struggle for respect and authority, testing if cleverness can defeat birthright, something Mozart felt deeply. So Figaro answers with strategy, not panic, and in Se violerà, Signor Contino, he warns the Count that if the master wants a dance, the servant will choose the steps. The stakes escalate once the Countess discovers her spouse chasing Susanna, transforming her profound grief into a cunning tactical plan. In Porgi amor qualche ristoro, her loneliness opens a wound that gives the comedy real emotional weight. Rather than remaining crushed, she allies with Figaro and Susanna, transforming from an ignored spouse into an active accomplice. Now the Count faces a quiet alliance built for war. Figaro's nerve, Susanna's precision, and the Countess's rank. Their advantage is straightforward. They understand his arrogance far better than he perceives their determination. When night falls, Susanna and the Countess trade clothes, turning appearance itself into a loaded trap. Believing his lust maintains his authority, the Count pushes ahead and stumbles directly into a massive public embarrassment. Forced to beg forgiveness from his neglected wife, he looks beaten. But danger remains, because men like this keep scheming. After romantic advances flop, authority shifts strategies, postponing the nuptials by bringing up Figaro's previous commitment to wed Marcellina. With Dr. Bartolo and Marcellina beside him, flirtation becomes a legal weapon, and the house turns into a courtroom. A legal judgment forces Figaro to fulfill this obligation, leaving the couple abruptly facing total ruin right before their vows. Cornered, Figaro says he cannot marry without his parents' consent, then admits he never knew them because he was abducted as a child. This frantic revelation jolts Marcellina's recollection, leading her to discover that Figaro is actually her missing child, Raffaello. In one breath, the forced marriage disappears, and the Count's case collapses. Susanna appears exactly then, spots Figaro hugging Marcellina, and for a tense moment, sudden envy nearly derails their salvation. Then the truth lands, trust returns, and the tension breaks with the kind of laughter only earned chaos can produce. Once this hurdle vanishes, the route to marriage clears, and all the manipulative tactics the Count deployed simply highlight his personal vulnerabilities. That is Figaro's sharp lesson. Intelligence, loyalty, and timing beat rank, yet the Count keeps hunting control, so triumph never loses suspense. jazz. Imagine if the humor amusing the entire town was the exact same satire that might have completely ruined the composer before the premiere even happened. That was the danger hanging over Vienna on May 1, 1786, when the Marriage of Figaro reached the Burgtheater and aimed straight at class vanity, privilege, and the foolishness of powerful men. The genuine tension didn't revolve around the score's quality, but rather if the ridiculed aristocrats would identify themselves and retaliate aggressively. Mozart had written the sting honestly, and da Ponti understood that survival at court still depended on what happened offstage before a single note was heard. Therefore, he convinced Emperor Joseph II to approve the production, carefully sneaking the sharp critique past censors untouched rather than dulling its edge. That mattered because Mozart won the stage without surrendering the truth that gave the work its electricity. Next, a genuinely risky situation unfolded. Vienna's elite laughed, applauded, and kept coming back, whether they fully understood the mirror in front of them or not. Throughout the following half-decade, the production ran almost 40 times, demonstrating that biting societal satire could flourish within the exact environment it criticized. With Figaro, Mozart stopped looking like a brilliant entertainer and started looking like a man who could control an entire stage with speed, feeling, satire, and nerve. This wasn't merely a seasonal hit anymore. It sparked a legendary legacy destined to outlast the theatre itself. And while Vienna admired him, Prague loved him with something warmer and deeper. During the beginning of 1787, the composer traveled there and discovered a metropolis that apparently comprehended his genius without demanding prior justifications. He brought more than opera fame with him, presenting Symphony No. 38 in D major, later called the Prague Symphony, as proof that his imagination was still widening. This trip combined symphonic acclaim with dramatic success, causing Prague to increasingly resemble a secondary residence rather than just a brief tour location. Success, though, has a brutal habit of raising the price of the next move. The Estates Theatre hired the duo for a new production, meaning they couldn't just comfortably ride the coattails of Figaro or simply duplicate its style. They needed something bigger, stranger, and darker, something that could shock the same audience into new attention. With Don Giovanni, a writer responded humorous production centered around manipulation, lies, chasing desires, and divine punishment, where terror
needed something big.
lurked beneath the humor. The opening made that clear immediately, when Giovanni tried to force his way into Donna Anna's life and killed her father, the commendatore, when he intervened. Instantly, the narrative tainted the light-hearted humor with murder and severe repercussions. As Giovanni fled, he ran into Donna Elvira, a former lover who cursed him for abandoning her. And suddenly, his past stopped feeling romantic and started feeling crowded with damage. Leporello subsequently transformed outrage into entertainment, informing Elvira of his boss's terrible nature while performing the iconic catalogue aria detailing Giovanni's continental romantic victories. The audience could laugh at the numbers, but the truth underneath was cold. Because Giovanni treated people like trophies, not partners, and each new conquest only built the case against him. Once the second act began, the unstoppable entity he couldn't sweet-talk or outsmart eventually showed up. As, passing the statue of the Commendatore, Giovanni and Leporello heard the dead man warn that Giovanni would not survive the day, and the opera suddenly shifted from recklessness to fate. Despite this, Giovanni selected rebellion, asking the monument to dine with him as though pure audacity might defeat divine retribution. That was his psychology in full view. Fearless on the surface, hollow underneath, mistaking refusal to bend for actual strength. Once night fell and the spirit reappeared, Leporello shook. Giovanni rejected forgiveness, and destruction ultimately took him because he prioritized sheer arrogance over salvation. The backstage story was nearly as dramatic, because Don Giovanni premiered in Prague on October 29, 1787, after Mozart finished the overture at the last possible moment, and the orchestra practically had to play it by sight. While Prague celebrated his audacity with massive success, Vienna responded rather frostily during April 1788. They complimented the score, yet griped that the vocals were overly complex and the production excessively dense. This taught the composer a harsh, enduring truth. Although achievement might boost his influence, wealth, and fame, it could never ensure that every audience possessed the courage to embrace the innovative direction his creativity was heading. Prague should have been the moment everything settled, but Mozart's life was starting to split apart. Fame resided on one hand, featuring sold-out venues and theatrical victories, continually illuminating his reputation. The other held a world no applause could stabilize, where success and security no longer traveled together. Next destiny briefly flashed at the entrance. In April 1787, 16-year-old Beethoven arrived in Vienna hoping to study with Mozart, and one era almost touched the next. Nobody can confirm the composer actually listened to him, yet this close encounter remains thrilling. Just as quickly, it vanished. Since his mum was fatally ill, Beethoven hurried home to Bonn within roughly 14 days. To others, the door closed before either man could step through it, and the year kept that haunted feeling. The composer responded to instability by composing melodies so elegant they nearly masked his underlying tension. That summer he composed the Serenade for Strings No. 13, later called Eine kleine Nachtmusik. This radiance is crucial, since beneath the appeal, you feel him stubbornly hiding his immense stress. December brought recognition after Gluck's death, when Mozart was appointed imperial composer. Although the designation appeared prestigious, the actual job was a minor gig, paying 800 florins annually. He was being honored, not truly empowered. The Austrian capital recognized his worth without providing the massive platform his brilliant mind required. Then the deepest wound landed. When 67-year-old Leopold passed away during May 1787, Wolfgang lost the dad who both nurtured and oppressed him. That grief was never clean. His father provided structure, education, drive, and continental connections, yet simultaneously caused his grown-up years to resemble a constant struggle to breathe. So sorrow arrived mixed with gratitude, resentment, loyalty, and old pressure. Tragedy returned the following 12 months, as Constanze and Wolfgang suffered the death of their half-year-old baby girl. Home was becoming a place where hope kept arriving and then disappearing before it could settle into ordinary life. Nevertheless, the musician refused to stop composing. In the middle of grief, he wrote Symphonies Nos. 39, 40, and 41, his final and greatest symphonic statement. This seems more like pure rebellion than a getaway, acting as though he was imposing stability on a crumbling existence. Number 39 opens with breadth and ceremonial confidence, like a man still claiming space as the walls narrow. Number 40 hits profoundly harder. Its G minor opening is urgent, restless, and painfully human, a theme that turns unease into melody. Eventually dubbed Jupiter, number 41 emerges as a massive, perfectly proportioned masterpiece, pushing orchestral composition toward a scale previously unimaginable then. While Mozart wrote at that level, the world around him was turning colder. When Austria entered the Russo-Turkish conflict in February 1788, nobles fled, budgets shrank, and entertainment revenues significantly dropped. Debt stopped being an irritation and became a threat. This juxtaposition proved cruel. Brilliant compositions continued flowing, yet his personal foundation rapidly crumbled, while each overdue invoice ridiculed the magnificent art he consistently produced. So in spring 1789 he went back on the road, planning a tour through Berlin, Prague, Dresden and Leipzig to chase money and favor. Departing without expectant Constance caused the journey to resemble sheer desperation rather than mere professional ambition. Our trip did not save him. Arriving back in Vienna virtually broke on June 4, 1789, he discovered Constance severely sick, requiring imminent medical care in Baden. Then November brought one more intimate disaster, when she gave birth to a daughter who lived less than an hour. He ended this era, leaving legendary works behind, facing dwindling funds, poor health, and deceased infants. He absorbed the brutal truth that extraordinary intellect might shape history, yet completely fail to shield a person's existence. By late 1789, Mozart was still battling for relevance, not just reaching for inspiration, and that fight changed everything. He initiated his third, ultimate collaboration alongside Lorenzo da Ponte for Così fan tutte, a name that essentially mocked the concept of romance. It means, so do they all. And right away the phrase promises wit, suspicion, seduction, and emotional chess. Debuting during January 1790, the production successfully attracted crowds, although future critics eventually ranked it beneath both Figaro and Don Giovanni. That early success mattered because it proved Mozart could still win the public, while critical opinion shifted under his feet. Suddenly, governmental affairs halted everything once more. On February 20, 1790, Emperor Joseph II died, and the opera's run stopped almost cold with him. This served as another harsh signal, indicating his professional success relied upon authority, scheduling, and monarchs, rather than mere capability. Later that year, he went to Frankfurt for the coronation of Leopold II, not as a tourist, but as a strategist. Remaining prominent within the realm was essential, since slipping from public view while drowning in debt meant absolute career suicide. In October, he played Piano Concerto No. 26, the coronation concerto, with all the brilliance he could still summon. However, sheer genius didn't offer protection anymore, and his excursion unsuccessfully secured the royal reputation he eagerly desired. While Mozart struggled in public, Constanze fought the quieter war that kept the family alive. While he was away, she obtained another loan carrying 5% interest and relocated their family into a tinier flat. That was not surrender. This represented a calculated withdrawal, demonstrating she wasn't merely surviving adversity anymore, but actively handling it, utilizing boldness and focus. Her steadiness brought Mozart something precious, which was room to keep writing instead of drowning in debt panic. Soon an alternative route emerged, proving simultaneously promising and incredibly agonizing. And Mozart and Haydn were invited to tour London together, a journey that promised money, prestige, and one last great public alliance. The composer declined. Constanze was pregnant again, the household was still fragile, and leaving now felt less like ambition than betrayal. Initially concealed, the price of this decision proved everlasting, since he would completely lose the chance to ever reunite with Haydn. On slightly firmer ground, Mozart turned back to composition in 1791 with Piano Concerto No. 27. Rather than coming across as flashy arrogance, these deeply introspective compositions suggested a creator tuning into his innermost spirit. He premiered it in March, proving his voice was still evolving under pressure, not shrinking beneath it. Finally, a genuine opportunity presented itself. On May 9th, he was appointed Assistant Kapellmeister at St. Stephen's Cathedral, with the promise of succession at 2,000 florins a year. Although not a complete triumph, it provided an avenue towards security via official employment rather than constant struggling. A new ally soon arrived when fellow Freemason Emanuel Schikaneder asked him to write Die Zauberflöte, the magic flute. Featuring Masonic principles and German lyrics, the piece allowed the composer to connect with average folks via humor, fantasy, and ethics. But while shaping that brighter world, he was drawn into a darker one when a masked stranger requested a requiem and hid the patron's name. This sheer confidentiality gave the assignment an eerie vibe, almost as though the Grim Reaper visited in disguise. Mozart soon guessed the buyer was Count Franz Walsegg, a fellow Mason known for purchasing music and passing it off as his own. seeking a memorial for his recently deceased spouse, Wolfgang essentially transformed intimate sorrow into an extremely deceptive commercial arrangement. Mozart accepted anyway, because the payment was generous, and necessity leaves little room for purity. Approaching his ultimate peak, he learned a brutal truth. Brilliant minds must constantly negotiate with wealthy sponsors, hidden agendas, deep fatigue, and desperate financial necessity. In the summer of 1791, success came back within reach, but it looked less like rescue than a final test of endurance. While actively juggling the magic flute and the mysterious requiem, the composer received another massive musical request from Prague. Every new commission promised prestige, money, and exposure, but each one also pulled another strip of strength from him. Soon, governmental obligations increased the pressure, as officials commanded him to compose La Clemenza di Tito, celebrating Emperor Leopold's Bohemian crowning. Its story of Emperor Titus forgiving his enemies fit the ceremony perfectly, binding Mozart once again to imperial expectations. His peaceful, isolated composing days ended, replaced entirely by a chaotic system of strict timelines, royal pageantry, traveling, and political messaging. At home, joy arrived at the worst possible moment, when Constanze gave birth on July 26 to Franz Xaver Wolfgang. Although a living boy ordinarily brings domestic joy to the weary musician, it represented another mouth relying entirely upon his drained energy. Even the family's movements revealed the truth, because when he traveled to Prague, Constanze went with him into the struggle. His professional and personal spheres completely merged, becoming heavily intertwined to the point where any career risk directly impacted his household's survival. La Clemenza di Tito premiered on September 6, 1791, the very day Leopold was crowned King of Bohemia. Despite a magnificent venue, the attendance of royalty, and genuine prestige, the audience's reaction ended up being significantly more lukewarm than initially anticipated. Later listeners would admire the opera, yet in that first moment it denied him the clean breakthrough he badly needed. While Prague appeared unsure, the Austrian capital responded enthusiastically. The Magic Flute debuted on September 30 and immediately attracted massive crowds. Its mix of wonder, comedy, and moral mystery hit ordinary audiences with unusual force and proved Mozart still owned the public imagination. This massive hit ought to have provided ultimate security. Yet the victory arrived exactly while his physical health noticeably started deteriorating publicly. By autumn, the bill for a decade of composing, touring, teaching, performing, and worrying could no longer be hidden. Laziness didn't cause his breakdown. Rather, relentless creative output destroyed him, almost as though his extreme work ethic essentially devoured him alive. As the illness deepened, his fear deepened with it, and he began suspecting that someone was poisoning him. Supposedly, he mentioned aqua tofana, a legendary Italian toxin, associated with stealthy assassinations and hidden rumors, casting a gloomy shadow over everything. Whether that suspicion rose from bodily decline, panic, or both, it gave his final months a cold, cinematic dread. Subsequently, typical gossip spread rapidly, transforming Antonio Salieri into an ideal antagonist for individuals craving a more dramatic and sensationalized narrative. No proof ever settled that accusation, but legends survive because many people prefer envy and murder to sickness and exhaustion. Pushkin expanded the narrative, before Amadeus eventually cemented it deeply into mainstream culture, permanently morphing historical ambiguity into a lasting legend. The reality was harsher and quieter, because by November Mozart's condition worsened so badly that he was confined to bed. Despite the agony, he continuously pursued creative structure, verbally giving musical instructions to his helper rather than completely giving up. That image tells the truth better than the gossip does, because at the end, he was still a working artist. His physical deterioration turned fatal by early December 1791, leading to the composer's tragic passing shortly past midnight on December 5. He was buried 2 days later at St. Mark's Cemetery in Vienna in a small, severely limited ceremony. Considering his melodies had thrilled royal palaces and concert halls continent-wide, such an incredibly modest funeral seems exceptionally harsh and unjust. The contrast is the lesson and the wound, because brilliance can win applause without ever securing protection, rest, or time. Medical professionals and scholars continually debate his exact downfall, suggesting chronic sickness, kidney disease, severe fatigue, bleeding, strep throat, and pneumonia. He left behind unfinished work, newly regained success, and stability still just out of reach, which is why the final question still hangs in the air. Was the famous musician taken away abruptly, or had society slowly exhausted his spirit long before his final melody concluded? Mozart died young, but once the struggle ended, his artistic shadow only stretched farther across history. remains a titan of classical composition simply because his enduring masterpieces continue feeling vibrant, precise, and completely unapologetic today. Its range, clarity, emotional force, and durability make the legend sound proven, not exaggerated. Coached since childhood by Leopold, the true marvel remains how that exceptional youngster successfully blossomed into an absolute master. Even after Italy praised him and elite listeners admired him, secure employment kept sliding away. This defeat holds significance, proving how red tape, envy, poor luck, and financial reliance might humble absolute brilliance. Salzburg gave him discipline, training, and a first platform, then hardened into the cage he hated. Everything shifted during 1781, when Vienna finally provided a sprawling metropolis, capable of properly fulfilling his massive professional aspirations. There he became the leading musician of his age, though never with the lasting security he needed. As the Magic Flute and Figaro demonstrated his profound understanding of humor, timing, paradoxes, and personality development. The piano concertos and symphonies match that power without words, balancing elegance with deep structural intelligence. This incredible versatility places him alongside Beethoven historically, even though his distinct musical personality stays completely unique and recognizable. His music can sound light on the surface, yet underneath live grief, tension, and hard-won brightness. He tragically lost most of his infants, and financial woes ensued, exacerbated by shifting preferences and fickle benefactors. So he endures not as a saint, but as a dazzling, vulnerable man who made costly mistakes. Mozart demonstrates that immense talent survives bankruptcy, sickness, gossip, and unfulfilled ambitions, leaving behind a profoundly resonant void. Mozart's death hits hard because it feels like the lights went out just as the fire spread. He passed away at 35, but throughout the late 1780s and early 1790s, his compositions were becoming increasingly daring, brooding, and profoundly courageous. That leaves a ghost story behind the legend. Operas, symphonies, and sacred works the world never got to hear. Consequently, his lasting impact simultaneously provokes both profound amazement and ongoing debate.
His lasting impact provokes profound amazement.
Many listeners hear such balance, beauty, and invention that calling him history's greatest composer feels completely fair. Meanwhile, some argue that Beethoven delved further into hardship, suffering, and unfiltered human emotion. And that opens the irresistible question: if Mozart had lived decades longer, could he have passed even Beethoven? Let me know your perspective, and I appreciate you tuning in. The discussion continues.